Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here, and I'm doing this video because I wanted to kind of finalize my thoughts on the final X-Men movie, or at least X-Men team-based movie, since New Mutants is supposed to come out, apparently 2020. Um, we'll see. But with this being the last of the X-Men franchise, where it's the official team, Xavier School for Gifted Students or whatever, that's just to say, like, the movie just makes me not care. But the Xavier School for Gifted Children or Youngsters or whatever, it is an interesting film. Everyone's been all over it because, of course, it's not that good. It's not a great movie. If you want to check out my review, you definitely can. I'll have it linked at the end of this if you guys want to check it out because, of course, it's just a review of the movie. There are some spoilers in it in the second half, so that'll kind of be the lead in to this, really. So you might want to check at least the second half of that out. But yeah, it was interesting. Like, going through, I was like, okay, I didn't hate the movie. Like, a lot of people were just like, they hate the movie. I saw a meme today that was hilarious that my friend posted where it was like a judge was sentencing someone. It was like, please be death, please be death. And it was like, I sentenced you to tickets to Dark Phoenix. I was like, fuck. And I was like, it was super funny, but I was like, man, the movie's not that bad to me, at least. I thought, yeah, it's definitely not a good final outing. And you could tell based on the movie, and obviously there's going to be spoilers in this, but you can tell based on the movie that this was pre Disney purchase. So it was like, okay, here's some stuff with Magneto having his own island, which, and a couple movies could possibly lead to Asteroid M. Like, they'd have to do a lot of work to even lead up to that stuff because it was just like, oh, cool, he has the island. And that instantly makes me think of Asteroid M. But there's so much stuff in between that and with the alternate timelines where it's like everyone's younger and all this other stuff like that would be like some Thanos type stuff. They would have to wait like another 10 years just to build up to him effing having Asteroid M because none of the characters would even exist. Like, he wouldn't have his kids there, he wouldn't have a bunch of other characters there. Obviously, with the alternate timeline where a lot of the characters are good, so Mystique is basically good in the new version, she wouldn't be there like by his side. He wouldn't have anybody there, like no one would actually be there yet. So it was just one of those things where it was like, it would have took them forever to build up to that anyway, even if the movies kept going. But I was like, okay, we had this movie. It's just so. For me, like I said, I don't think it's the worst one. I still think X-Men Origins Wolverine is worse. I just personally, there's maybe one scene in that whole movie that really gets me, maybe two. Of course, when Wolverine's like first transformed and he's like going ballistic and stuff, that's a cool sequence. And then the scene in like the beginning of the movie where he like stabs a dude in the arm because he used like a poison tip arrow to fight a bear, and he was like, because Wolverine's a type of dude where it's like, if you're gonna fight an animal, like, keep it fair. And so he like stabs the dude in the hand. I was like, okay, that's a cool scene because that was Wolverine just being pissed. And I'm pretty sure that was in X-Men Origins. That could have possibly been in The Wolverine as well. So I'm gonna hope that was in X-Men Origins because that's the one thing I got outside of Wolverine waking up, and he didn't really kill a bunch of people. It was just a cool scene where he bursts out of the water and like he's got the claws for the first time. So hopefully that was X-Men Origins and that wasn't in The Wolverine, which it probably was, or he killed that dude for using a. It might actually that was The Wolverine because I remember he was fighting them, and that's when I can't remember her name, but the other woman, she comes in to help him during that fight. So that wasn't even X-Men Origins, and that was like the one other cool scene they had. So that movie's got one scene and a bunch of other bad stuff. But this movie, I was like, all right, I at least like the action. I like some of the story elements. Origins, I felt didn't have any of that stuff. So with this one, I certainly don't consider it the worst one. I can say like, yeah, I could totally understand this being like at least the second worst one. And some people might argue Apocalypse was a bit worse than this, but I think I'd still rather see Apocalypse because at least it was a bit more entertaining. Like, all the way through, it was like, all right, it was more comic booky because this one I'd say was a bit more dramatic, and they have really just the ending was the only bit of real action in the movie because they have like the opening. Technically, they're saving people, but it's not like I wouldn't call that an action sequence because they teleport into the ship and they pull people out, and then the Phoenix Force comes, or the Force, because they don't call it the Phoenix Force, which they should have done. I mean, just throw it in there, but. It's just like, okay, I wouldn't really count that as action. They have the scene on the street, which was super. That was so fast. I was kind of disappointed in that too, because I was like, yeah, not much really happened here. Like Quicksilver, I knew that was gonna happen, because of the trailer. You could tell. I was like, okay, she's like on a whole different level, and so he's gonna try to run up and punch her, and she's gonna move the thing out of the way or whatever, and he's gonna fall, which knocked him out of the whole movie. And I was like, what is the point of him even being like an actor in the movie? Like, I feel like he did more acting in the commercials from the last movie than he did. I think he did more acting for commercial spots from from Apocalypse than he did actual acting in this entire movie, because he was in the beginning. I was like, okay, he does some running, he does like the little thing, he picks everybody up, they drop back to the ship, and he makes some jokes about them going to space, and then he gets knocked out and he flies like 1,800 feet, and I was like, I didn't understand that. I guess she was just using her powers and just sent them flying, and I was just like, okay. And he was out of the whole movie. He was out of the movie until the end of the movie, and it was just like, hey, no running, and he made a little joke because he's the super speed guy, and I was like, they just can't have this dude in here because he's too powerful. He would just stop everything. So they always have to write him out, or do what X-Men First Class was and just be like, yeah, he's just gone. At least in the other ones, it made sense. Like he was in Apocalypse for a decent amount, and they did some good stuff with him there. And then this one, they just wrote him out. And then in First Class, they were just like, okay, bye. And it's just that sort of thing. But I was like, all right, that was disappointing to see. And then going through the movie, got some good stuff. The Xavier thing I thought was entertaining, where it's like he's the bad guy. I like that element because you rarely see that, but that is a part of his character where he is this dude who is like the best of the best. Like that's what his character is all about, and sometimes that gets to his head. And you see, it's a very rare thing where that actually becomes a part of the story. But it was cool to see it in the movie where it was like, this is your fault. Like you screwed up, and he just couldn't admit that he was wrong because although he was doing it for the right reasons, he just couldn't admit that he still screwed up. Like you can try to do right. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. That sort of thing. And it's like you can try to do right all you want, but you still screwed up. Instead of helping her cope with it, you just erased it and kind of like wiped it from her memory. Told her dad was dead and just kind of locked some stuff away. Also, another thing. So that's stuff I like. Actually, I'll do all the stuff I like, and then we'll get to like the other stuff that started to bug me during my review. So that I thought was good. The in-action sequence was super sweet. Them on the train, I thought was fantastic. I loved every second of that. It was super cool to see them like have the little things. Beast jumped around and did some stupid stuff. Storm shot some lightning, which was cool. But Magneto probably had the sweetest section. Him and Nightcrawler probably had the two best moments because Nightcrawler finally like lost it and started cutting people up and stuff. And Magneto was just slicing people up and tossing people out of the train when he like closes in the train car and just flips it off the train tracks. That was super cool. I was like, I love that scene. Like it was just awesome, and it was just cool. It just visually looked cool. When they fight in the street, when it ends and stuff, and he pulls the train up, I was like, oh, that's cool. Super dumb, but he pulls up a train and it was cool. And so it slides in behind him, and it's like a super epic entrance. I was like, oh, that's very nice. That was super dumb because I was like, what the F is he doing? I don't know. And then he pulled a whole train up, and I was like, okay, I mean, that's cool, but there are cars here, so I mean, I'm just saying, if he can pull up a train, he can probably just be like, okay, I want like these 5 cars and just crush them into a ball or something, and just it wouldn't look as cool. But I was just like, okay, cool. I guess it is what it is. That's it. So let's see. Good thing for Xavier. Ending action sequence. I think that's it. Okay, so everything else in the movie, stuff that just was dumb, stuff that I just didn't make any sense. So you have these villains, right? Whatever the enemies are, which I think the main female villain's name is Smith, which I only found out because I was looking up the little icon stuff, the emojis for Twitter when I was putting my review up, and her name was on one of the things I found, and I was like, oh, is that her name? I didn't know that because they never effing say her name. It was probably the human woman's actual name, but it wouldn't make sense to call her Smith. Like her husband wouldn't have called her Smith by her last name. Like it wouldn't make sense. But apparently that was her name. It was Smith or whatever. So they aren't the Shi'ar Empire. So I thought that was super dumb. Even if they didn't know that this was ending, it was like, why would you change the name? So I don't know if that's some weird legal stuff, which it wouldn't make sense because the Shi'ar Empire is more connected to the X-Men, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they do have the rights to the Shi'ar Empire. That could still be Marvel. So maybe that's why it was a different empire and it wasn't the Shi'ar. But I was like, okay, that's weird. That didn't make any sense. They didn't call it the Phoenix Force, which that definitely doesn't make sense. Obviously, they have the rights because the movie is called Dark Phoenix, so they have the rights to call it the Phoenix Force, and that's what they should have done. Instead of throwing it in as like a little reference to be like, oh, the kids are calling you Phoenix, like you rise from the ashes. They should have just had it be like, yeah, we call it the Phoenix Force. That's it. Just call it that because that's cool. That's what it is in the comics. Just call it that. No reason not to. That's it. Just do that. Take out the little reference to the comics. Just make it what it is in the comics. That's it. That was a little thing. Let's see. I'm trying to save my favorite thing for last because it was just one of the things that really bugged me. So I'll save that for last. Let's see, what else did we have? The villains themselves I thought were super boring. Like I said, I didn't even know their names whatsoever. Everything they did was pretty much boring except for their introduction, which I thought was super cool because I was like, oh, they're like these. They almost look like trees when they were like coming out of the forest, and they freak the woman out. They kill the dog, they kill her, and then they walk into the party. And that was another thing. I thought that was super weird, where everyone was like super freaked out as soon as she showed up, and it was like she just walked back and she was quiet, and everyone was just like, and they were freaking out. And I'm like, she just walked back and she was quiet, and that was it. Like, I understand that that might cause people to say something, and then she doesn't say anything in return, and then everyone stops and looks at her. It was literally as soon as she showed up, everyone like got completely silent, as if she had like blood on her face. And maybe I missed it, but I'm like, I'm pretty sure she's still in like a full white outfit, and nothing is wrong with her body or anything like that. She was just totally silent, and I was like, everyone stopped as soon as she walked up. It was just like she showed up, and everybody was just like, and they just froze. And I'm like, why are they silent all of a sudden? Like, it would make sense if the husband said something like, oh, hey, honey, like, what was up with the dog? And she gave, like, no response, and she just started walking towards him. Yeah, because that's what they do in everything. Like, when people get killed by aliens, they come in, and everybody's normal, and then someone talks to them, and then they give, like, no response, and then everybody's like, that's weird, she didn't give a response, or, you know, that person didn't say anything. So then they start to pay attention, and everyone gets quiet, like, what's going on? But it was literally, as soon as she showed up, everyone got silent, and I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, she left and then she came back, the dog got quiet, and that was it. But it was just like, within 1 second, everyone just froze and started looking at it, and I was like, that was too quick. That didn't make any sense. Why everyone just suddenly stopped, as if she had like blood. If she had blood on her face, I'd be like, that makes sense. Everyone's like, holy crap, what just happened? She just showed up and she was quiet, and then everyone just stopped, and I'm like, I think that would be normal. Like, it's not like she was standing there for like 10 seconds and then it was just like, why is she still standing up? It was like as soon as she showed up. So that was a super random thing in the very beginning of the movie. I was like, that was weird that they turned so quickly to just be like, something's wrong. I was like, no one would know that. Like, she just came back, and that was it. So that I thought was super weird. Of course, the Jennifer Lawrence thing. Just in general, because I watched the video and it was super funny to, like, it was obvious from the trailer, but man, to see it side by side is insane on the makeup. Like, it was obvious that, I mean, she was light blue in this movie. Like, seriously, she was not in the normal makeup, but she wasn't in the makeup from the last movie. She was in like some light blue. They were just like, and they sprayed her because she didn't want to be in the movie. And so they like did some little spray paint on her face and put some little black rocks and stuff on her, and like the hair looked super crappy. It was just like a red wig, and I was like, it's like bright red. It's not even like the dark red that she normally has. And it was just funny, like when I watched the actual video to see it like side by side from First Class to, you know, Days of Future Past, and, you know, all 4 movies that she was in. It was just funny because it was like she was in the full on stuff when she was in First Class, and that was like right before she like blew up as an actress. And then I think it changed in like every single movie, but it was like slight differences and stuff, but you could tell it was different. And then in this one, it was just like, as soon as I saw that trailer, I was like, she is light blue and has like little black spots on her face, like, which was never even a thing in the other ones. Like, she had like the protrusions but it was still all blue, and in this it's literally like little black rocks on her face. And I was like, well, that's super weird. Like, why not just make it all blue? But I guess considering they had to spray paint her like super bright blue, and she wasn't going in through like all the makeup and stuff, they're like, we got to do something to make it stand out, because otherwise she's just got a light blue face and going around like Dr. Manhattan or something with red hair. So that was interesting. Like, obviously a lot of, you know, she did not want, that was like the big thing for the movie, is like she did not want to be in this, and she gets killed off super quick, so she could just be like, whew, I'm out of here, and she was out of there. But the makeup stuff was just like, wow on that. Wow on the costumes. I was so, I think like a lot of people, I was so upset when the first trailer for this came out, and they're walking in, and I was like, what the F are they wearing? Why are they wearing the black suits with the X's on them? And I was like, I know that's from the comic books, but they ended the last movie, and this is what I hate about the X-Men movies, probably since Origins Wolverine, I guess. They'll end a movie, and then the next movie comes out, and it's like, F that. Even though that was the sweetest thing ever, they were all in their costumes. I was like, Cyclops looked sweet. He wasn't in yellow, but it was like a blue, and his sash was silver instead of the sash being blue, and the rest, or instead of his sash being yellow, his sash was silver. And I was like, that looks super cool. He had the full thing, and then this whole movie, I guess technically he had visors at one point, but for the most part, he just had glasses. Little clicky thing. That's from my review. I mentioned like he kept clicking that thing, and I was like, for some reason it just kept standing out like it was a button. But I'll talk about that later, because that was one of my big things in the movie. But I was like, he had his costume, Mystique had her costume. Like, they had the costumes. It's not like any of the actors changed. They had all of the same actors come back. Still didn't put Jubilee in there. I'm still pissed about that. Like, I mean, just from that deleted scene I saw for Apocalypse, I was like, why didn't they put her in the effing movie? Like, she was cast so perfect. But everybody had their costumes. Like, everyone looked great in the costumes. They already had the costumes. Just bring them back for the movie. Just have them in those costumes. It just didn't make any sense. It was super annoying. I was like, this is so dumb. And they just came in and they were just like, yeah, we're just going to go with classic costumes. Like, how much work could it have really been to put those costumes on? Because it's not like everyone had to put on like crazy suits and this and that. It was like maybe some stuff was a 2-piece, maybe a 3-piece. Like, Mystique probably had, I don't remember if she had like the sleeves or whatever, the white sleeves, but like, yeah, she had like the white outfit, like the dress and everything, and everybody else had like their costumes. But I was just like, what the heck? Why did they switch that out? That's horrible. Like, somebody finally was like, I know how to make the old, comic book / X-Men 90s cartoon, costumes slightly altered, maybe not the exact same colors, but you can see it's there. It's in the design. It's right there. Nightcrawler had his stuff. Cyclops had his. Everybody had their stuff. And then the trailer for this came out, and they're just in the suits with the X's on them. And I was like, no. You have the costumes. Why didn't you use them? But anyway, that was technically a minor thing. So villain sucked. The costume thing, that sucked. Let's see, what else was bad? So all their little stuff where it was like, clearly this was meant to go on. That was just unfortunate, because it was like, oh, the stuff with Magneto having his own island, that was cool. I liked that idea, and I was like, oh man, the potential for that, at least. Granted, even if Disney hadn't bought it, clearly none of the actors really wanted to be in the X-Men movies anymore. So who knows how that really would have played out. Maybe they killed off Mystique. Maybe Michael Fassbender would have been like, yeah, I'm tired of this too. And so they probably would have killed Magneto off, and probably they would have had to have done some extra stuff. I don't know. But I just don't know. I don't know what they really would have done with it. And I guess him having that island, and technically Quicksilver being in it, I guess his sister in that was Wanda from, in First Class, that was Scarlet Witch, I guess. So I guess technically they could have done it where they take over super duper early, but there's just a million things. Like, it just wouldn't work the same way. So I just don't know what they would have done there. But I was like, okay, I like that. And then just going throughout the rest of this movie, it was the Phoenix stuff, the villain stuff, and then the way they handle just some of the stuff. Like, that last chunk of the movie is when things started to get a little weird. And it was specifically during the fight scene right before the super epic fight scene at the end of the movie. And it's them going to get Jean. So you got Beast, Magneto, and the hair guy, and the woman who's like kind of whatever her powers were. Like, I thought she could just communicate telepathically, but she could technically control people as well, because she was forcing Kurt to like teleport towards her because she was trying to kill him. Which I thought was a cool little moment. I was like, that's actually kind of entertaining, because she's like forcing him to use his powers to teleport, and she's basically just holding a knife out. And I was like, that's actually kind of entertaining. Like, she's not moving towards him. She's just like, why don't you just teleport right here and I'll just stab you. And I was like, that little cat and mouse game where it was like she was pulling him forward and he was trying to fight back, and Xavier was also trying to do that, and he's like rolling backwards, and it's like, okay, I'm trying to keep you here. And like, okay, and then I push you there, or control somebody else's mind, freeze you in place. So I thought that was cool, like watching him do that, and Kurt trying to basically survive in between that. I thought that was cool. Then there's the rest of the fight. First off, Beast. What the F was he doing? Like, he went out into the street and almost got hit by a car, and then that started like the whole chain reaction of cars being like scattered around because it was a big car crash, and then they have their fight sequence. And I was like, that doesn't make sense. Like, what? Like, he just wasn't paying attention. Like, I guess he was angry, but it was like they just had a super calm conversation, and then he was just like, all right, you stop them, I'm gonna go get Jean and kill her. And then he just like jumped into the middle of the street, and I was like, what is he doing? Like, that didn't even make sense to me. And then he's like, whoa, and I almost got hit by a car. I was like, yeah, you just walked into the middle of the street. Like, what? And it was just dumb. So that was super annoying. I thought that was really weird. And then my favorite thing in this whole movie, Cyclops. So they were just like, whatever with his powers in this movie, because it didn't make any sense whatsoever. And I was talking to my friends about this, and I mentioned this in my review, but him using his optic beam was the most inconsistent thing in this movie, I think, because there were parts where he would hit stuff. It was like, okay, I'm going to hit you. And this was really the big part, was during that scene where they're fighting in the middle of the street. It was like, all right, I can hit this person. I'll knock him down. I hit this car, I'll blow a chunk out of it, but then I'll hit this other car in the window, and it'll ricochet off the window and hit this woman in the shoulder to knock her down so she can't control Kurt and he can get to Professor X. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Now, this is where I think they should have done the visor thing again, because they have it in the very first X-Men movie where he has like the little meter, and they show it where he like turns it up a couple of times, and it'll be a more powerful blast because he can like sear through metal and stuff like that with his powers. So it's like, okay, they have that there, and it was so easy to do that, or at least just keep it consistent. Either have it where it's super strong or it's not that strong, or have something in there where if he holds it down longer, more of the beam comes out, so that just makes it more powerful, but that's not what it is. It was just the glasses let his powers, just phase through. So I was like, all right, this doesn't make any sense. And then I mentioned in my review that I was super disappointed that they didn't just have a scene, especially at the end of the movie, when Smith, who I guess was supposed to be like the White Queen from the comics, which is Emma Frost. So like just the scene where she's coming towards Jean at the end of the train and everybody's trying to stop her, and she's just like pushing people out of the way and lifting them up in the air. I guess she knocked out Kurt by lifting him up in the air, by the way, because like I thought she was going to do something and he just floated up and then he came back down, and I don't remember him like dropping super hard, but I was like, all she did was just send him up and he dropped, and I was like, that's it? Okay, I guess. I mean, they could have just shown it where she just slammed him into a wall and he hit his head really hard and he fainted. That would have been more believable, but she literally was just like, and you went up and you came back down, and like he passed out. And I'm like, I don't know. That's no. But she's stopping everybody, and then Cyclops is at the end, and I was like, this is where, regardless of whether or not they knew this was the last movie, this is where you do a cool comic book thing, where you have the character who can't control his ability just go all out. He's trying to save the woman he loves. He is the last physical defense that they actually have, because at this point Jean is still unconscious. They should have just had it where he took the glasses off and just did like a crazy optic blast and tried to like sear through her body. And they should have shown it. Like, I mean, they showed her getting shot up in the face, which admittedly was another cool scene. But it was just like, man, why didn't they just have him take the glasses off? Like, he's still there, like hitting buttons. Like, this is the time where you just like open your eyes and just go, okay, and just try to kill this woman. But instead, he's still just tapping away, and then she did, I don't remember, she did something and he was incapacitated, or maybe that's when Jean first woke up. So I was just like, well, that was a super missed opportunity. But the whole time, it was just so inconsistent. Like, all right, so he can take a chunk off this car, but then the next car, like, maybe taxis are way tougher than I anticipated, and that's why it didn't, nothing happened. But he ricocheted, and not only did he ricochet it, but he blew the chunk off of the first car. But when he hit the taxi, it's not like, oh, it hit and then it ricocheted. It ricocheted, but the taxi moved over. Like, the taxi shifted over when he hit it, so it was that much power to move it. But somehow the beam wasn't strong enough to break through the glass. Like, it was strong enough to push the entire car over, because it was like, oh, the force of this beam is super strong. But somehow just a glass window was even stronger than an optic blast, and it ricocheted off. But he blew a chunk of metal off of this other car when he was like trying to hit Beast. Which, once again, I was like, okay, so if he blew the chunk off of that car, what would have happened if he hit Beast? Like, that's the type of thing I'm thinking of, because he pushed one car by hitting the window, but he hit a piece of metal. It didn't dent. It exploded. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. And, of course, that whole fight sequence, like a minute before it started, Xavier's like, we can't fight here. They'll see us as monsters. And then they go balls to the wall, crazy action. Storm is, like, shooting icicles at the dude with the hair on top of the double-decker bus. Cyclops really was just blasting like a maniac. I was like, what is he doing? Like, legitimately, when I saw that and they were fighting and people were jumping around, like, Beast looked dumb because he ran right in the street. I was like, well, that was stupid. And, Storm's fighting and she's throwing the icicles and all that crap, and the dude's whipping his hair around and the woman's trying to control Kurt. And Cyclops is just missing everything. And also, by the way, his powers literally work by, I'm looking at the thing I'm trying to hit, and he's just missing everything. I'm like, either he's leading, or he doesn't know. Maybe, he's doing that little twitch thing where you look at something, but for like a split second, you look right down, and I guess that's why he kept missing. But I'm like, this dude is just shooting optic beams, and he's just like, and he's missing everything. So I'm like, how many people are getting injured right now? Because he's just hitting optic beams on everything but the other people. I think he hit Beast once, and that was when Xavier froze him on top of the taxi, or like a different car, and then he blasted him off the car to like knock him unconscious. And so, other than that, he missed the entire time, and he was just blowing up cars. I mean, he technically did hit the woman in the shoulder, which, like I said, the magic ricochet off the car that pushed the car but didn't push the window. But he blew up the car like 2 seconds earlier, like blew a chunk off of the other car. So that was insanely inconsistent. But it was just like he's just firing away, and they're just they're having this crazy battle in the street, and then we get to the end of the battle where everyone's doing their thing here and there. People are getting knocked out. People are fighting still, and Magneto decided, like I said, he pulled up a train. It looked super cool when you walked in. I was like, that's really cool. But I was like, are they gonna do? Honestly, in my head, I guess it's just as dumb. Maybe it's dumber because it wouldn't make sense. But I was like, is he about to like pull up some crazy cache of guns out of the ground, or like does he know there's like some secret military thing right under their feet or something? Because I'm like, what's he doing? Like what is he trying to do? Because I thought in my head, I'm like, this makes perfect sense. I was thinking he's using his powers to pull up like pipes out of the ground to just almost like make a wall and just start wrapping people up, because it was just like light posts and stuff. And he was like, all right, I'm just gonna pull like the metal out of the ground, like out of the streets, and just be like boom, and just like grab everybody and freeze them in place. And I was like, that would make perfect sense. And it was taking a long time, and I was like, okay, is he about to pull up some magic cache of guns? What could he possibly be doing? And then he pulled up an entire subway, and I was like, all right. It looked super in the moment. I was like, that's super cool. But after like that first moment where I was like, that's really cool that he did that. He just pulled an entire subway out of the ground. That was a split second. I was like, that's really cool. And then I was like, why is that happening? Why did he need to pull a train out of the subway? Like, why? That's literally the only question, just why. Because and it was funny, I was watching a review and some people mentioned it. It was supposed to be like the thing where he blocks everyone else, but that's literally how the army gets in, because it's a train and you can just get in from one car and then you walk in a straight line and then you go out the front of the train and then you're inside the building exactly where he is. So it was literally like no defense whatsoever. And like that's literally that has nothing to do with like Kurt or anything like him teleporting Professor X into the building, any of that stuff. It was just like, that's just dumb. Just use the cars, use the bus, like just flip. All he had to do, honestly, one car. Get the taxi. I mean, apparently it's indestructible. So just get the taxi, pull it sideways, and you're good to go. Like, or don't even do it sideways. Just do it vertical. Just walk through the door, bring the taxi with you, slam it into the door, maybe like fold the ceiling into the concrete or whatever on the inside. Nobody's getting past that. I mean, like they can blast it, which of course they would have done, but I mean, it was technically, that would have been more work than the train, because they could have just blasted like a little window and just walked in anyway, which is what the police did, or the military, when they showed up at the end of the fight. So it's like, that didn't make any sense. It did look cool. It was a very cool looking scene, but it was still dumb. So it was just very interesting, very interesting. Also, Dazzler was in the movie. I didn't mention that during my review. They did have Dazzler in this, and I think that had more to do with the fact that the whole thing with Taylor Swift possibly being Dazzler and stuff from the last movie, they're like, let's put Dazzler in it, but it was not Taylor Swift. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. Would have been cooler if it was Jubilee, or if both of them were there, at least. But, Jubilee was not in the film, which is still stupid. And Dazzler is Dazzler, and no one gives a crap about her. No offense to Dazzler, but nobody cares about Dazzler. But it's like, okay, that's X-Men Dark Phoenix, the last X-Men movie, not counting the New Mutants. And like I said, I still think Origins Wolverine was worse, but I'd say this is number 2. I'd rather watch Apocalypse. I mean, it has not just the Quicksilver scene, but that is my favorite scene in the movie, because I love that whole scene. Plus, I love the song. I like that song better than the one they did in First Class, and it was even longer, and he did even cooler stuff, and I was like, I love this scene, so that was great. I didn't mind what they did with, Apocalypse wasn't that great or anything, but I was like, okay, still entertained by it, still thought it was interesting. But yeah, I'd say it's probably number 2. I still like X-Men First Class. X-Men First Class is like top 3. So X-Men First Class is better. The first 3 movies are better. X-Men Last Stand. This, I would say, is worse than Last Stand, because at least you have the build-up of the first 2 movies. And in this one, it's like, most of the characters are new. They're all the kids, and we've only known them for 1 movie. And it's not like we really got to know them anyway, because they were fighting Apocalypse. Like, when you have Apocalypse, you can't focus on new characters. Like, that's just plain and simple. Even though these are technically characters we've known from the other films, they're like the new versions of them and all that. So you still have to get reattached to them, because it's not the same continuity anymore. And you can't do that. You have Apocalypse. it doesn't work. It's just like with the Avengers. Like you have Thanos come in. Like the first movie, Infinity War was about Thanos. Like you don't get to learn about the other characters. These are all people that you've already known, and that's all there is to it. The only people that were new were villains, and that's it. So it was like, we're not like tossing in a bunch of new people and you're getting to relearn a new cast of characters or the same characters with a new cast. It was just like, these are the people you know. This is the new villain, so you get to know him. That's it. That's what it is. That's what they did. And it was like the opposite. Or no, it wasn't the opposite. That's exactly what they did with Apocalypse, except they added new people in. And it was like, oh, this is the new cast, the young version. And it was cool to see that. But we didn't get to know them. Like, we didn't get to know anything about them. The school blew up in that movie. They were probably in it for like 5 minutes. Because I feel like that was within 10. It wasn't within 10 minutes. It was probably like 30 or 40 minutes in the movie. But it felt like it was early on. Like, you didn't spend much time actually in the school or anything. Like, we saw the characters, but whatever, who cares? So it's not like we had any attachment. So The Last Stand still has that over this movie. The visuals, oddly enough, were kind of similar to The Last Stand as far as Phoenix, like erasing stuff and turning it into sand and all that crap, which is a cool visual. So that's probably why they took it, because I'm like, it's a sweet visual. How do you do better than that? So that's probably why they did that. When she was like blasting people, turning people into Legos. Oh, that was another thing that was dumb. The aliens, they were jumping a bunch. Like they would be jumping from like 10 feet away, and it was like, why are they doing that when like they'd be jumping, and you can see this if you happen to remember it. But when they did it at the end, when Jean's just like blasting people and turn them into bricks, there was a guy who jumped at her from like the side, and it was in slow motion. And I was like, they were already doing it in normal motion. I can see it because they would jump from like 5 feet or 10 feet away from the person they were trying to kill, and it was like a video game. Like they would jump and they would just stay in this pose and just be flying towards them. And I was like, that is the most obvious wire work there is. When you just have someone jump and then they just fly super far. And it wasn't like it made sense. It wasn't like a pose where they jumped from one location to another. It was like they were jumping to punch something. So it's not like you jump and then you're landing, but you're jumping and you're literally like with the arm back. It looks like you're flying. Like it just makes it look stupider because you're jumping from like 10 feet back, which didn't make sense anyway. Like even just in a normal fighting situation, it doesn't make sense to jump. Like you just wouldn't jump. Even if you have super strength, unless you're jumping and that makes you actually go faster, which it didn't, you don't jump. You jump at the last minute. I guess if you're about to do a jump punch or a flying kick or whatever, but they jump from like 10 feet away and they're like just flying towards them. And I was like, this looks stupid. It's like they're kind of flying, but they're not, because clearly they just jump, but they're just like floating across. And it's not like there's any sort of movement where they like jumping up and coming down on an arc. It's like, nope, they jumped and then the wires just carried them straight across, and that was it. And it was like, this is so obvious. And they did it a couple of times, and I think I noticed it the first time, and every time it happened I was like, they jumped super far, they jumped really far, this person is in slow motion jumping towards the camera, technically, because the camera was on the side of Jean and he's like this towards the camera, and then she stopped him and killed him. But I was like, he jumped over a log or something that was like 5 feet back from her, and he was just like this in midair, just in the same position, just getting closer, and it was in slow motion and everything. And I was like, that looks so stupid, and it just didn't make any sense. And then he dies, but they all did anyway. But it was just like, why are they doing that? Why did they have them jump and do like the same pose over and over again? So that was another annoying little thing, like continuity, or not continuity wise, but just filming wise. So it was like, why are they doing that? Why do they keep having them jump and float on the wires? Like there was no need for them to jump in general. Like they could have just been trying to run up to her and punch her, or do that to any of the characters. Like there's no need for them to do like the stupid super jump unless it was at least going to do something. Like I don't think there was a single time where they did that super long jump and they actually got a hit in. I think every time they showed them do that and they're like floating across to the person, they always ended up getting hit anyway. And it was like, there's not even a purpose to it. It just looks stupid, and then they get stopped. And it was like, all right then, I guess that's that. But that's Dark Phoenix. That is unfortunately the last film. And I wanted to, like I said, do this video just to have like my final thoughts on it and kind of reiterate some of the stuff that I went through in my spoiler section for my review, and just talk about it a bit. And like I said, say like, I don't think it's the worst movie. I do think X-Men Origins is worse than this. I mean, that movie's just really bad. This, I think, was at least a little bit better. I would say Apocalypse is better than this one because, like I said, not just the Quicksilver scene, but as a whole, it at least has more action to it. It feels like more of a comic book movie. Obviously, Days of Future Past is just really, really good. First Class is phenomenal. Logan, obviously, like great. I still personally think I would put First Class just above Logan. As much as I love Logan, I don't know. I think something about X-Men First Class, like, it surprised me even more than Logan did, because I was kind of expecting that to be really good. But First Class, I think his First Class came out after, I think that was the next one after Origins, if I'm not mistaken. So I think that one, because of how surprisingly great it was, it's still super high. Like, I still have those memories of seeing it and being like, holy crap, I was excited to see it just because it's, an X-Men movie. But it was like, it skyrocketed far beyond my expectations. Like, everything in that movie was fantastic. And I guess because I didn't expect it to be that great, it's still like that in my head. Even if I rewatch it, I still love the movie. So I think that's why it stays so high. And with Logan, I was already like, finally, I waited like 17 years, 16 years for them to do an R-rated Wolverine movie. And I already knew it was going to be great. And it was. So I think it was like, something being great when you don't expect it makes it better. And something being great when you expect it to be great, it's like, cool. Like, it's just that thing. So I think that's why First Class is still there. And it just still gets me. Because the scene, like, when Xavier was helping Magneto to like move the giant satellite, and he like helps him like basically get past his own trauma. That's like one of my favorite scenes in that whole movie, and it's like a dramatic moment, and like he starts crying and stuff because he's like, he's trying to help him get past the torture he went through being in Nazi internment camps. And I just love that. I was like, that was such a good scene. And of course, Logan has a ton of emotional stuff in it as well. So they do some fantastic stuff in that too. So it's just one of those things. But for me, I'd still probably pick First Class just because it's like, man, it still just hits me how surprisingly great that movie is sometimes. And with Logan, it's just like, I expected it to be great, and it certainly was. I could totally, I'm not going to argue with anyone if they're like, that's their favorite over X-Men First Class. It's like, yeah, it is Logan. I can objectively be like, I understand. Like, there's literally no argument for me to be had when it comes to Logan being somebody's number one. Because it was like, yep, I get it. So that's just my personal thing, though. It's like, it's always like we're back and forth, but I put it at number 2, and First Class still number 1. But this one, second to last, still not as bad as X-Men Origins. So that's just me. But I wanted to just do a video, talk about it. It's been like a week or two since the movie came out. And I just wanted to kind of do my final thoughts. I've had time since E3 was really taking up all my time, because I would have done this a long time ago, but video game news, so I was like, it'll wait, because who cares about the movie anyway? Nobody cares. So that's why this is coming out super late anyway. But yeah, X-Men or not even X-Men, Dark Phoenix. It's unfortunate that this is where things kind of just stop when it comes to this franchise. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what Disney does. We'll see how long it takes for them to finally be like, we got the actors, and this is what's, going to be the next evolution of the X-Men, who the actors are going to be, that sort of thing. Are they going to start, kind of like with this, are they going to start the characters off young again? Are they going to start them off as adults because they want to jump right into, Avengers stuff? So it'll be interesting to see how that ends up playing out, and just as a whole, what that is going to entail when we get the X-Men in the MCU. But either way, Dark Phoenix is Dark Phoenix. X-Men First Class X-Men Last Stand Part 2, not as good, unfortunately. But yeah, Dark Phoenix. I would love to know your thoughts on it. What bugged you? Like, just not even just movie-wise, just what weird inconsistencies. Like I said, the Cyclops thing was super annoying. The aliens like jumping at them and just like floating across the screen was super stupid. I think it was those two things that just really bugged me a bunch. Like the stuff with Jennifer Lawrence, like the makeup thing was just obvious, and I was like, well, that's really bad. But it was just like, okay. Quicksilver being taken out was just disappointing. I thought he'd at least, I didn't expect them to do like the Quicksilver scene. I was fine if they didn't. I just like Quicksilver because I love characters with super speed. I'm always excited to see like, how are they going to utilize that? What's going to happen? And I feel like the Apocalypse was where they did it best, because he had the Quicksilver scene, but we saw him actually fight people too. Or at least, he fought against Apocalypse, and then eventually Apocalypse was, he caught up to him and he froze him and he broke his leg. But it was just one of those things where it was like, in this one, they just couldn't be bothered with it. Or maybe Peter Evans just couldn't do it, and so that's why they had to do it that way. Maybe he was, doing some American Horror Story stuff. Maybe he didn't want to really be in the whole movie, just like Jennifer Lawrence. I don't know. But yeah, that was the movie. I wish we got to see a lot more stuff. Wanted to see some crazy stuff from Cyclops with optic beams. I wish Jubilee was still in it. That's just so unfortunate because she looked just I want to actually I never saw the deleted scene, so I should look it up. But we're there at the movies in Apocalypse. It's like, man, I want to see that. I want to see what they do with that character. But I think she's literally in. I think she's in the car with them when they do the slow motion sequence. I think it's her because I think it's Jean, Nightcrawler, Cyclops, and Jubilee, and it's them coming back from the mall. But that's literally it. Like I think she's in the car, and maybe they show her somewhere else in the movie. I don't even remember, but that's literally it. Like I don't think like she's in that car with them coming back from the mall, but then she's not in any other scene in the movie, and they just because they did that, I guess they're like, well, let's not waste our time paying this actress to come back. So it's just like, plus I guess she wouldn't have been in the costume anyway, so it wouldn't have even mattered. It wouldn't have been like, man, look how great she looks as Jubilee. It wouldn't have mattered because nobody, like, nowhere in the entire movie is it like, man, look how great this character looks as this character, because they're all just in the black outfits, or I guess they were navy blue technically, with the X's, and they all just look normal. And Magneto came in, and I also didn't get why he had a silver helmet. That was something I remember from the trailers. I forgot to mention that, but I was like, why was his helmet silver? Because he had it in the last movie. He had it in Apocalypse. He had like the Magneto helmet, and then in this one, it was like he had another. It looked like the first class helmet where it was like silver again. And I was like, why is that the case? Because it's not like they put it in the dialogue where he was like, when he's talking to Jean, like that would have been a cool thing if he was like, like you see me with this helmet and I tore it away. I tore the color away, or something like that. If they put that line in there to like take myself a little bit back to my roots, but a different version of myself, or like starting over and having this reminder, with it connecting back to first class and stuff, like having this reminder of it being silver and stuff like that. I felt like they could have done something with a tiny bit of dialogue, but it was just like, nope, it's just silver again, like it was back in first class when he took it from I want to say it was Sebastian Stan, Kevin Bacon's character. And I was like, that's weird. Why? Like, it should just be the Magneto helmet again. But it wasn't. And it didn't, like, it would have been fine if he didn't wear the costume. And maybe that's why, because they were like, we're not putting any costumes in this movie, period, which they didn't. That, like, not a single person was even close to having their costume. And so maybe that's why they were like, let's just make it silver again so people don't expect him to, like, dress up or anything, because it would stand out more, because he's wearing, like, a black jacket the whole movie, and just, he was in black literally the entire movie. So I guess they were like, let's just put silver on it, because we don't want to put like the Magneto magenta and have him in black all the time, which I think still would have worked. I think it would have actually fit to have him like in a black jacket with the helmet on and not the full Magneto outfit. But it was just like, no, let's just make it silver. No real explanation. It was like, well, why wouldn't it just stay the same color? Weird stuff like that. It had only been, I guess it was supposed to be like 10 years or whatever from the last movie to this one. But it was just like, well, I didn't. That was another weird, tiny, little, itty bitty little thing where it's like, I don't get that. Maybe I forgot something from Apocalypse. I don't know, but pretty sure he had the classic helmet on. That was, man, it's really sad, but Apocalypse was probably the best one when you think about color wise, visuals wise. That was probably the best one for their actual costumes, because the villains had costumes. Psylocke had hers. Angel didn't have anything. He just had the metal wings. Storm had like a version of her outfit at least. Everybody had their stuff, especially by the end of the movie, all the heroes had theirs. So sadly, I think that was like the best one for the costumes, which is real messed up. Like probably Days of Future Past was like the second best, because they were at least like putting hints and stuff in there. That's interesting. Yeah, Dark Phoenix. That was heck of a ride for the end. Heck of a slow burn fizzle of a ride, and then maybe New Mutants will come out. Who the F knows? That was supposed to get sequels. They had all that stuff planned, so maybe the next movie will end with a cliffhanger, because this one ended with Phoenix like being in the sky and stuff, and obviously that means literally nothing. But it was like, oh, maybe she'll come back. No. So we'll see what happens. MCU, they've got X-Men, they've got Fantastic Four. Third time's the charm. So it would technically be the fourth time, but no one even thinks about that really old 90s movie. So we'll count it as third time's the charm. And we'll see what the MCU has for us as far as the X-Men making their return, Fantastic Four coming in. I don't know what they have planned for the Inhumans after that show got canceled, because it was not good and nobody watched it, and it got canceled after like 9 episodes. So I don't know if they're even going to waste their time bringing the Inhumans back. People don't even like them that much in the comic books, so I don't think they're going to bother. They're like, well, that show failed. That just didn't happen anymore. So maybe that's all there is to it, but we'll just have to wait and see. But thanks for checking this out. I know this was super long, but yeah, I had to get my thoughts out and just talk about it, because it's the end of an era, and it was an unfortunate end. And there's just some stuff where it's like, there were things I liked, like I said, don't think it was as bad as Origins. But there's a lot of stuff that was just like consistency wise. Optic beams were dumb. Film wise, like them having them jump and be on the wires, like skating across the ground. A bunch of different times where I noticed it. Stupid stuff like Magneto pulling up a subway car when he could have just pulled a car right behind him. Wouldn't have looked as cool, like I said, but it would have been just as much protection. He has enough powers to like kind of fight Jean with the helicopter scene. He could have picked up two cars. It would have been pretty simple. We saw him stop missiles in X-Men First Class. We saw him pick up stadiums. That was another thing people mentioned in other reviews I watched, where his powers were super inconsistent because it was like we saw him pick up a stadium in Days of Future Past, and then it was like he struggled to pull up, the subway car and stuff like that. So it was just like, okie dokie. Some stuff he has trouble with, some stuff he doesn't. And it just depends on the movie. It's much like the timeline. It just depends on who wants to do what. It's like, these characters exist? Not anymore. This character used to be that? I don't care. This character should be dead? No explanation. Why was Xavier alive? Don't know. We'll never know. But that's how it works. That is, that's Dark Phoenix, and it is what it is, unfortunately. But of course, I would love to know what you guys thought about the movie. Good, bad. Where does it rank for you? Is it the worst? I don't even want to joke and say, is it the best? I don't think anyone could possibly say this was the best X-Men movie. Like, that would just be insane. It would have to be, like, the only X-Men movie that you saw to be like, this is the best X-Men movie. Like, that's the only way. Because it's just not the best. Like, objectively speaking, in a lot of different ways, it is not the best X-Men movie. But we'd love to know your thoughts on it. So please, put your comments down in the comment section below. And, of course, thanks for watching.